So, we have been talking about justice for some time, and it is important to understand that our own understanding of justice is often not very clear because we tend to view justice as a process. So we, like, for example, I go to a court of law and there is something happens and that we consider justice. But justice is much more than that. Justice is not simply a process. Justice entails way more than a simple process of handing out judgments. Because if we keep on thinking about justice, then nothing happens. We have to actually perform every day, every moment. Every moment we have to perform justice. Now, how to do that? And that is why the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Sri Krishna is again and again talking about justice. How to do this? And that is again the topic of yoga in general. But like there are four main types of yoga. The karma yoga, which is the method of action or activity. Then the bhakti yoga, the method of devotion or surrender. Then the jnana yoga, the method of wisdom and understanding. And then the method of raja yoga, that is the method of breath control and physical control in general, and also the method of meditation in particular. So these four are the main realizations or main methods. In addition, there is also the tantric approach, the tantra approach, which we are not discussing in this particular series, but which has its own set of scriptures and instructions, and also different realizations very clearly and neatly described. So in general, the Bhagavad Gita expounds on very clearly and very much in detail the four yogas: the karma yoga, the yoga of action, the bhakti yoga, the yoga of devotion, the raja yoga, the yoga of meditation and breath control, and the yoga of jnana, knowledge, wisdom or understanding. So these four yogas comprise the main tenet of Bhagavad Gita's understanding. Now, what we mean by that? So what is understanding, for example, right? The four yogas. So when we say understanding, it doesn't simply mean, like understanding 2 plus 2 equals 4. Like, of course, that is also a particular kind of understanding, because 2 plus 2 equals 4 only under certain set of assumptions. Now, if we keep on going further, like if we say why 2 plus 2 equal to 4, then we can see there is much more than that, right? For example, there is the Peano arithmetic or Peano axioms. Then there is Gödel's incompleteness theorem, the set theory, Cantor sets, diagonalization, all these things. Now, we don't necessarily have to know, or we don't necessarily need to know all these things. But the point is, there is a lot going on behind a simple understanding like 2 plus 2 equals 4. And then when we are talking about understanding our own nature, the real nature, the self, that is even more complex. Why? Because we have something called the mind, which acts as a barrier, like a barrier to entry, like a screen, smoke screen. So we have to go beyond the smoke screen to get at our self. And that is what the jnana yoga, or the yoga of wisdom and understanding, repeatedly tells us to do. Continuously think that you are not the body, you are not the mind, you are beyond the body and beyond the mind. Now, what is this? What is this beyond the body, beyond the mind, this business? what it really is that you are not without a body. Of course, you have the body, but the body is kind of without you, in the sense that you are not the body, and the body is not you, right? Natvam deho nate deho. This is from Ashtavakra Samhita, and the body definitely is something other than you. You are housed in the body. That is, you live within the body. You live in the body. But the body is not you. The body is different. But at the same time, the body is permeated and pervaded by you. So, like, I exist at every point in my body. And the body exists where? And this is important. Like, the body is ending. Like, where does it start and where does it end? So we cannot say, okay, the body has a physical dimension, right? I mean, if there is a physical dimension, then we need to be, if there is a dimension, then we have to be able to measure the dimension, like 5 meters tall, 6 feet long, and so on. But then the dimensions are not clear. For example, the fractal dimensions, right? So the body is like a fractal. So how can you measure the body? You cannot. So you don't really know where the body is ending and where it's starting. And this is even more complicated when we come to mind. Because body, at least we can observe, we can touch, we can smell, we can taste even, but the mind is even more subtle. The mind we can only observe with mind. Mind cannot be directly observed with physical apparatus. And that is why justice that involves the mind is much more complicated than the justice that simply involves body. So it's like criminal lawsuits versus civil lawsuits, right? So the criminal lawsuits are kind of like, so if you can prove an evidence like a DNA proof, then that is your evidence. That is criminal justice. But for spiritual justice, we need different kinds of proof. The DNA proof is not good enough. So we need different kinds of justice for spirituality. And now let us see what Lord Sri Krishna is mentioning in the Bhagavad Gita regarding justice. So as we have mentioned before, it comes starting 10th chapter and even before, by the way. So 11th chapter, where the Lord is showing his universal form, that is sort of the climax of the Bhagavad Gita. And then after that, in chapter 12, the Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of devotion, when Arjuna asked like whether there is a distinction between the bhaktas, the devotees, and the jnanis, the wise ones, then the Lord clearly mentioned that no, there is no difference. But if you follow the path of devotion, then it's easier. Why? Because, so of course, Lord gave the reason that that it's easier to conceive of God as a human being. Then only we have the love, the emotions, the connections, the attachments. But also at the same time, there is another explanation that is given in Advaita Vedanta is bhakti or love goes to the heart. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that bhakti is like a woman, like a female, which can go into the very inner territories, the innermost sanctum of your heart. And that is only possible if you have the bhakti. If you have jnana, the knowledge, on the other hand, the wisdom, then you can understand, of course not all jnanis are like this, but you may understand things philosophically, intellectually, but not experientially. And it's extremely important that we understand dharma, justice, and all its attendant, the processes and everything experientially. If we do not actually experience the dharma, the justice, we cannot be just to others. And that is why again and again the Lord is mentioning the practice, the yoga. The yoga and taking again the 4 forms, the jnana, the bhakti, and the raja yoga, right, the meditation, and the karma yoga, the yoga of action, all 4 come together. all four actually lead to the same goal. Ultimately, you attain the Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and you, which is in the Bhagavad Gita terms, it is called Samadhi, and then you realize Brahman, in the sense that you become God. So it's called theosis in Eastern Orthodox terminology. The point is, when we feel that, when we feel we are one with God, we cannot have hatred. We cannot hate anyone. I mean, of course, we might be angry, like time to time and all that. I mean, we can beat others, even like Sri Ramakrishna used to say, like, oh no, why don't you give a couple slaps, to a cat who used to eat meat from our M. Mahendranath Gupta's plate. So why don't you give a couple slaps? But that's all, not more than that. So he said that you cannot actually harm the other person, because you'll feel that even the cat has that soul, the spirit of Brahman. And this is important because if we do any studies, if we are doing research, for example, then we are often asked to write about it, to write about things, to explain what it was observed, all that. Now, it's very difficult to write about Brahman. Sri Ramakrishna says, everything has been touched, and spoiled, except Brahman. Because Brahman, we can talk about it, but we cannot describe it. We can write about it, but we cannot explain it. Brahman is beyond everything, beyond explanation, beyond everything. And that is important when we understand that, okay, that means that I have to penetrate the mind. In other words, I have to penetrate not only the body, the physical obstructions, but also the mind. Not just the body, but also the mind and the emotions. So it's really like a three-step process. So in the first step, the Raja Yoga tells us that if we can completely settle the body, like if we can completely stupefy the body in some way, then we can stupefy the mind as well. So immediately it's the other way around, right? Like starting from the body, we get to the mind. And once the mind is completely stupefied, of course the emotions will be completely stabilized as well. And by that, we will actually realize Brahman. Now the problem is, once we realize Brahman, it's very difficult to actually remain in that state. Because once we realize Brahman, we are, we are in a different state of existence. And that state is very different from the normal state of affairs. It's almost like walking blindfolded, walking like blindfolded, right? So, you are wearing that blindfold, but nobody else does, right? So, you are seeing the world with completely new eyes, Divya Chakshu. So, when we see the world like that, then the justice is natural. So, let's see what Lord Sri Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad Gita according to justice. So, in the very first chapter, and let's begin at the beginning, chapter 1, Shloka 1, Arjuna Vishwada Yoga, where Arjuna, the great warrior, is very much scared and afraid to perform this just war, right? To fight this battle against his own kith and kin, against his own relatives. He is very, very scared. And we have to see like why he is so scared, right? Because he was not scared so far, right? I mean, he was completely okay and he was ready to fight. But then suddenly something happens and he becomes very, very scared, right? I cannot fight this battle. I am feeling very, very undisturbed and I cannot fight this. So what to do? And then, so even before that, I mean, let us actually read the Gita Kavacham, which is before the actual text of the Bhagavad Gita. And this appears because we want to explain the Bhagavad Gita in the mindset of that war. We want to be there. If not physically, we want to be there spiritually. So, Srimad Jnanatmane Shri Krishnaya Angušthabhyam Namaha. Srimad Aishwaryatmane Vaishvanaraya Tarjani Vyam Swaha. Shri Vasudevaya Madhyamabhyam Vashat. Srimad Valatmane Balabhadraya Anamikabhyam Hum. Srimad Tejasatmane Shri Krishnaya Kanishtabhyam Vaushat. Srimad Vijayatmane Gandivadhanvine Srimad Arjunaya Karatala Prishtabhyam Astraya Bhat. Iti Karanyasa. Ithang Hridayaya Namaha Shirase Swaha Shikhavai Vashat Kavachaya Hum Netratrayaya Vaushat Karatala Prishtabhyam Astraya Phat Iti Anganyasa. Yo Gita Nang Samuhena Shrotumichati Pandava Sadevaha Shashtakai Shlokai Stuta Eva Nasamshaya. Om Namo Narayana Eti Karashuddhim Kritva Manivandhe Prakoshthe Cha Kurpare Hastayostale Karagre Karaprishthe Cha Karashuddhi Rudahita Omiti Mula Mantrena Trihi Pranayamam Va Rechaka Trayam Kritva Omityekaksharam Brahma Vyaharan Mam Anusmaran Yah Prayati Tyajan Dehang Sayati Paramangatim. Sarvatah Panipadam Tat Sarvatokshi Shiromukham Sarvatah Shrutimalloke Sarvam Avritya Tishtati. Now here, this is wonderful, right? Like the Sanskrit and the meters, the way they are explaining, it's like, so they are actually talking about yoga, like right here, like they have started talking about the Raja Yoga, for example, right? The method of meditation. So they are talking about pranayama, the breath control. They are talking about the physical anganyasa, karanyasa, the physical control, all those things. Why? Because again and again we have to keep in mind that here we are talking about Brahma Vidya, which is the knowledge of the wisdom about Brahman. And that requires some special preparation. If we are not prepared, then all the methods, whatever method we follow, is not going to be successful. It may be successful after a lot of effort, but with the right approach, it will be successful very fast and very effectively. So, iti hridayaya namaha. That is, I pray in the heart. Hridayaya is I pray in the heart. The lotus of my heart is hridayaya. Srimad Aishwaratmane Chandase Shirase Swaha. Sthane Rishikesha Tava Prakirtya Jagat Pradhishyati Anurajyate Cha Rakshangsi Bhitani Disho Dravanti Sarve Namasyanti Cha Siddha Sanghaha. Srimad Shakyatmane Shri Veda Vyasaya Shikhayai Vashat. Kaving Purana Manushasita Ramano Rani Ang Samanusmaredya Sarvasya Dhataram Achintya Rupamaditya Varnam Tamasah Parastat. That is, we are really thinking about a being, an effulgent, radiant, glorious being who is beyond the darkness of this material world. Not just the material world, but also the thought world, the world of emotions. He or she or it is beyond that. Srimad Balatmane Balabhadra Ramaya Kavachaya Hum Yadadityagatam Tejo Jagadvasayate Khimam Yachandramasi Yachagno Tattejo Vidhi Mamakam. Srimad Tejasatmane Shri Krishnaya Netratrayaya Vaushat. Urdhva Moolam Adha Shakham Ashvatvam Prahurabhyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavid. That is, he or she, whoever actually understands, understanding of the Brahman, he or she knows that whatever we see all around us is only like the tip of the iceberg. is only like the roots of the tree, as if like uprooted, and we are only seeing the roots. And that is not the case, right? I mean, we are seeing the tree, but not the roots. But here it's beautifully Srimad Vijayatmane Gandiva Dhanvine Srimad Arjunaya Astraya Phat Om Bhur Swaromiti Digvandha. That is, in every direction we say such. We say these words. Digvandha, that is, every direction Punatu. In the sense that every direction, let it be sacred, let it be pious, let it be full of piety, Shraddha. And when every direction is full of devotion and piety, we get the wisdom automatically. That is the purpose of this Kavacham. Iti Shri Bhagavad Gita Kavacham Samaptam is done. Shri Krishnaya Arpanamastu. We offered this Kavacham to Lord Shri Krishna. Now, in the first chapter, in the very beginning, Arjuna Vishada Yoga, Arjuna, the warrior prince Arjuna, who was a great archer himself in those days, because an archer was indispensable in a war, and Arjuna was among the greatest, if not the greatest. So he was Vishada, he was depressed. Why? Because he suddenly came to the realization that I have to kill all my relatives indiscriminately. There is no discretion, there is no indiscriminately, I have to kill all my relatives. And that was a huge problem, because he has never killed his relatives before. So, but in the beginning it was not like that. In the beginning, the blind king Dhritarashtra, who is actually the uncle of Arjuna, he says, Dharma kshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsavaha mamakaha pandavaschaiva kim akurvata Sanjay. That is, in the field of dharma, important, in the field of justice, he is actually starting the first word itself. Dharma is basically justice. So we have to realize that the war is being fought in the field of justice, Dharma Kshetre. And what is the name of the field? Kurukshetre. So that is the second word, Kurukshetre. Samaveta, assembled all the different combatants, with their different astras and shastras. So astras are basically handheld weaponry, handheld devices, right, like mobile phones, but they can be used as weapons. So they are astras. And shastras are basically weapons that can be thrown from a distance, like a stone or a fling. So it's shastras, and they have come together, samaveta, that is, from all different directions, from many different provinces and states and countries. Who have come? The Yuyutsava, the Yodha, that is the warriors, along with their retinue and soldiers and everything. So it has been mentioned in the Mahabharata that there were many hundreds of thousands of people in that battle. Mamakaha, now this is important. Mamakaha, he is mentioning our people. So you see this political language, right? Our people, your people. Our people, their people. Ours and theirs. Mamakaha. It's ancient. Like even in ancient days, they used to use this kind of political terminology. Pandavaschaiva, and those people, Pandava, Kim Akurvata. What did they do? And now this is actually important, because it shows that Sanjaya actually did not start speaking. It was Dhritarashtra, the blind king, who starts speaking. Kim Akurvata, what did they do? So he is curious to know the outcome. And this is important because it shows a fundamental, a fundamentally different mind. A mind that is focused on the outcome is called a Rajasic mind. A Rajasic mind will always focus on the outcome, like what happened. Like, was it victory for us or was it defeat? Was it this or was it that? So it was always object oriented, like some object, and always thinking continuously, oh, okay, I have to get that object. So even in the war, like if the war does not work, then I have to do something else. So continuously thinking, and more and more and more we have to think in terms of objects. So that was Dhritarashtra, blind king. Kim Akurvat, what did they do? And then Sanjaya, so Sanjaya was a great personality, so he was charioteer of the blind king Dhritarashtra. And he was not, like as we shall see, he was not object oriented, he was process oriented. So he could actually see what was happening in the battlefield. And he responded, he said, Drishtva tu Pandava nikam vyurham duryodhanastada acharyam upasangamya raja vachanam avravit. That is, so Sanjaya is responding to Dhritarashtra's question, right? Like Kim Akurvata, what did they do? Now, interestingly, Sanjaya is starting with Duryodhana, the eldest son of Dhritarashtra. He says, Drishtva tu, that is, seeing this big, the big phalanx of army, Pandava Nikam, the phalanx of army of the Pandava side, Vyurham, all prepared, ready to go. Duryodhanastada, at that time, the king, or not the king, the prince, the Yuvraj, Duryodhan, Acharyam Upasangamya. Acharya, who was Acharya? Acharya was Dronacharya, who was in this battle, and he is fighting for the Kaurava, the Dhritarashtra side. He is not fighting for the Pandava side, although he was a teacher to both Pandavas and Kauravas. And this is actually interesting. So Dronacharya was a Brahmin, but in this war he is fighting like a Kshatriya, like a warrior. And that was something that is not becoming of being a Brahmin. So if you are a Brahmin, you are not supposed to go to a war. But this war, like in this particular war, all such rules were broken one by one. So Raja, and he addresses Duryodhana as Raja, not as Prince or Kumar, but as Raja. Vachanam Avravit. Duryodhana actually spoke to Dronacharya. Pashyaitam Pandu Putranam Acharya Mahatim Chamu Vyurham Drupada Putrena Tava Shishyena Dhimata. So now King Duryodhana or Prince Duryodhana, he goes to Dronacharya, right? The old Brahmin, the patriarch of Acharya, who was both Acharya to Kauravas and Pandavas. And Duryodhana goes to him and says, Pashya etam Pandu Putranam, that is, see here all the Pandavas. Mahatim Chomom, see their phalanx, the big army they have gathered, right? Vyurham Drupada Putrena. So Drupada Putra. So who was Drupada Putra? Drupada Putra was Dhrishtadyumna. So he was a big warrior and he was the commander-in-chief on the Pandava side. Tava Shishyena. So he was also a disciple, a student of Dronacharya. And particularly Duryodhana brings up those soft corners, the soft points. He knows that Dronacharya might have a soft point against Dhrishtadyumna. And Dhimata, Tava Shishyena Dhimata. And he says that, oh no, Acharya, like he is intelligent, he is the clever one. Dhrishtadyumna is a clever one, and you should really think about defeating them, not joining them. Like you are not supposed to join them, you are supposed to defeat them. And again, Duryodhana is pointing out those small details. And then he says, Atra Shura Maheshwasa Bhimarjuna Samayudhi Yuyudhano Viratascha Drupadascha Maharatha. He describes one by one all the big names, big shots on the other side. Why? because he wants to instill this feeling of disquiet in the mind of Dronacharya. Why? Because he wants Dronacharya to be fully engaged. He couldn't have done this with Bhishma, Pitamaha Bhishma, because Pitamaha Bhishma was already so quiet, so poised. He was a Brahmajnani, he knew Brahma. So Duryodhana could not do anything with Pitamaha Bhishma. So he went to Dronacharya to plant the seed of discord in his mind. Dhrishtaketushchekitanah Kashirajascha Viryavan Purujit Kunti Bhojascha Shaivyascha Narapungava. He mentions one by one all the big fighters on the other side, not on this side, not on Duryodhana's side. The other side, Bhima Arjuna Samayudhi, like, oh, see all the big people, Bhima Arjuna Samayudhi, like Bhima and Arjuna, all those people, Yuyudhano, Viratascha, Drupadascha, Maharatha, they are great fighters. Then he says, Dhrishtaketu, Chekitana, Kashirajascha, like all the people, Dhrishtaketu, Chekitan, Kashiraj, Purujit, Kunti Bhoj, Shraibhyascha, Narapungava, like they are not just great warriors, like you see how they are using the Narapungava, right? Great among human beings. So as if he is trying to say, oh Acharya, oh Dronacharya, you are not even a human being. Whereas we are fighting against the human, the great among human beings. Narapungava, Yudhamanyuscha, Vikranta, Uttamaujascha, Viryavan, Saubhadro Draupadeyascha, Sarva Eva Maharatha. Again and again and again he keeps talking about the people. So this is another something to think about. Why is Duryodhana suddenly he started talking about all the big shots on the other side. So one thing that clearly comes to mind is that he wanted to frighten Dronacharya. He wanted to scare him off, like, oh, see all these big people, now how can you fight them? But the other is, if you think deeper, we will see that he was himself very worried. He was worried that he was fighting against all these people. He was deeply worried already that he might lose the war and lose his life as well. So he is actually deeply worried. And this worry becomes manifested now when good people are worried, they actually shut down. They actually stop talking. They are worried so they don't talk to others. When bad and ugly people are worried, they actually worry others. They actually try to impose their worries on others' backs, on others' shoulders, as if their worry was not theirs, it was others' worries. So strikingly, Duryodhana is trying to put all the worries on the shoulder of Dronacharya. Now, what else he says? He says something even worse. He says, Asmakam tu vishishtaye tan nivodha dvijottam nayaka mama sainyasya sangartham tan bravimite. That is, oh, okay, so you have heard about all those people on the other side? Okay, no problem. Now, please hear from me, bravimite, I am telling you, vishishtaye, whoever is the special within our side. So I have told you, just purely see how categorically, like accounting mindset. He is keeping an account on each and everyone, right? Like, okay, this, then he starts talking about his own, people, like whoever is the biggest and best among his people. Tan nivodha dvijita. Please listen from me. Tan nivodha. As if Dronacharya doesn't even know. Like, of course he knows. Bhavan Bhishmascha, Karnascha, Kripascha, Samitinjaya. That is you, Bhishma, Pitamaha Bhishma, Karna, Kripa, and Samitinjaya. This is shloka number 8, chapter 1. Ashwathama, Vikarnascha, Saumadattir Jayadratha. He mentions again one by one all the fighters in his club. Now, it's interesting, he starts with Bhavan, so he starts with Dronacharya, that is, you are there. So he starts with that. So it's almost like giving a boost to the ego of Dronacharya, that he mentions his name even before Pitamaha Bhishma. And we will see this motif kind of recurring even in the Mahabharata. where people actually, for advancing their own little selfish gains, they put others before themselves. But that is not good, because they are only advancing their selfish gains. They are not serving God. And that is particularly evident when someone like Duryodhana speaks, because he is so obsessed with winning the war that he forgets what he is doing. That he is putting Dronacharya, who may be a great warrior but definitely not as great as Bhishma, before Bhishma. So we shall see what he says. Anyecha Vahavaha Shura, this is shloka number 9, chapter 1. Madarte, that is for me, Madarte, Tyakta Jivitaha, that is, oh, there are many others. Anyecha Vahava Shura, many others, many other fighters. Madarte, they are all fighting for me. There is I, me, mine. It's the same problem. I, me, mine. Madarte, Tyakta Jivitaha, they have already pledged their lives. Nana Shastra Praharanaha Sarve Yuddha Visharadaha. That is, they have many, many weapons. The handheld weapons, the Praharanaha, the fighting, the killing weapons, the battling weapons, the beating weapons, and they all survey. They all are very, very conversant, Visharadaha, conversant in the art of war. Yuddha Visharadaha. Now, he is basically trying to strike a comparison, a comparison between his side and the opposing side, and to a first student of justice, that will seem like justice, because it has a seeming of justice, like he's trying to balance the two sides. Like, okay, I have this, you have this, so you are balanced. The problem with this kind of thinking is, yes, it is justice from one angle, yes, that Duryodhana is very just warrior. Why? Or just ruler. Because he is thinking about his side and he is also thinking about the other side. The problem is, his justice stems from a limited understanding of reality. He thinks over and above all about his own win in the war. He only thinks whether and when he is going to win the war. And his justice, his sense of justice, his sense of balance comes from that sense of winning. So as if he is already winning the war, and that is how he is playing out his version of justice. And this is very different from God's version of justice, which we will see later, where God is not limited by a particular viewpoint of reality. And God doesn't care whether the Pandavas won or the Kauravas won. So God's view of reality and the justice that flows out from that view of reality is the one we all should strive for. Not the Duryodhana view of reality. Like, I have to win this battle, so yes, okay, I give the other party some concession. The concession bonus. So not like that. That is not justice. That is injustice. So, but anyway, but for the first pupil of justice, like whoever has come first to the class of law and justice, that is what will be taught to them. Like a balance between my side and your side. So when the balance is struck, then the justice is served. But definitely from God's perspective, as we shall see, that is not justice at all. So how does Duryodhana speak? He says, shloka number 10, chapter 1. Aparyaptam tad asmakam valam bhishma bhirakshitam. Paryaptam tu idam etesham valam bhima bhirakshitam. He immediately starts making comparisons. In the sense, he says, what, let's see, I have aparyaptam, I have much more tadasmakam, I have much more, our force, and he uses like political words, our, asmakam, he does not say my, right, mama, he says asmakam, like our forces are aparyapta, like unlimited, bhishma virakshitam, like protected by someone as great as Pitama Bhishma. Paryaptam tu idam eteshang balam bhima virakshanam. That is, their force is limited. It's not unlimited. Our force is unlimited and is protected by great warrior Bhishma. And their force, not only is it limited, it's protected by whom? It's protected by Bhima Virakshitam, Bhima, Paryaptam. And hence he immediately makes a case that, based on the balance of evidence, we should win this war. And this shows the internal turmoil that is going on in the mind of Duryodhana. On one hand, yes, he is winning the war based on the balance of evidence. But then at the same time, he cannot be sure because his foundation is not in Dharma, not in God. And hence he cannot be sure that he is winning the war. So, in the next shloka, shloka number 11, chapter 1, he says, Ayaneshu cha sarveshu yatha bhagam avasthitaha bhishma meva virakshantu bhavantah sarva evahi. That is, in every direction, or sarveshu, in all directions, yatha bhagam avasthitaha. Please assume your own posts, whichever post you have been assigned before. Bhishma meva virakshantu. Please protect Bhishma. Now this is important. Like he is saying, please protect Pitama Bhishma. Why? Because he is a great warrior, Pitama Bhishma, and he can fight the battle and he can win the war for us. Bhavantah sarva evahi. You all please protect Pitama Bhishma. And this is what Duryodhana says to Dronacharya before the war. And this is important because it illustrates a very subtle contrast between Arjuna on one side, who is genuinely scared, and Duryodhana on the other, who is disturbed, in turmoil, and who is haughty, arrogant. So it's an interesting contrast. Then what happens in the shloka 12 in chapter 1? Tasya sanjanayan harsham kuru vriddha pitamaha. So Pitama Bhishma apparently was listening to all this, just did not say anything. But now he did Singhanadang Vinadyachaih Shankhang Dadmo Pratapavan. So he blew his conch shell. The conch shell was a very important piece of equipment in ancient warfare, where it was used to warn each other of advancing armies, and at the same time to initiate the war, to express joy and all other things, to express victory. So many uses, conch shells. So the Pitama Bhishma, he actually blew his conch shell. Then what happened? Then many things happened from shloka number 13 to shloka number 19. It has been described like in detail, like what happened when Pitama Bhishma blew his conch shell. After that, in 7 shlokas, Vyasa is describing what happened after that. Tataha shankhasya bheryasya panabanaka gomukhaha sahasaiva bhyahanyanta sashabdastumulo bhavat. Tatah shvetair hayair yukte mahati syandane sthito madhavah pandavaschaiva divyo shankho pradadmatu. That is, what happened is a huge tumult of noise. Why? Because when once Pitama Bhishma, he blew his conch shell, everyone started blowing their own conch shells. Everyone started blowing their conch shells. Panavanaka gomukha, not just conch shells, but all other. This is both to reassure, your everyone, and also to sound that yes, we are here, we are ready to fight. Panavanaka gomukha, all the different kinds of instrument, the musical instrument that were there. Sahasa eva abhyahanyanta, suddenly they all sounded together. Sashabdas tumulo bhavat. That is, that huge sound, it became so tumultuous that it was deafening. Tata shvetvair hayair yukte, that is with white horses, Mahati Syandane Sthito. Syandan is chariot. So, chariot with white horses. Madhava Pandavaschaiva. Pandava here is all the five Pandava brothers. And Madhava is, of course, Lord Sri Krishna. Divyo Shankho Pradadmatuhu. That is, they all blew their own conch shells. Panchajanyam Rishikesho. Lord blew his conch shell, which was called Panchajanya. And there are reasons why it was called Panchajanya. So if we read the Mahabharata carefully, we will see why each conch shell was given a particular name. Devadattam Dhananjaya, that is, Arjuna blew his own conch shell, which was called Devadatta. Pondrang Dadmo Mahashankam Bhima Karma Brikodara. That is, Bhima, the second brother, the middle brother of Pandavas, he blew Pondra, his own conch shell. Then in shloka number 16, we shall see Ananta Vijayang Raja Kunti Putro Yudhishthira Nakulaha Sahadevascha Sughosha Mani Pushpako. That is, they all, like King Yudhishthira, and then Nakula, Sahadeva, they were Pandava brothers. They all blew their own conch shells. And this is important, like they are all blowing their conch shells to revitalize, to reinvigorate the kind of sapping strength. So they are saying like, no, we are ready, the moment, the war cry will be given, we will be attacking each other. Kashyascha Parameshwasah Shikhandi cha Maharatha Drishtadhyumno Viratascha Satyakischa Parajita. And this is wonderful how Sanjaya is describing all the different people like as aparajita, like they have not been vanquished before this. Satyakisha parajita. Now, when Duryodhana was describing them, he was describing in like condescendingly. He was describing, all those people, they are here, they are just to fight, they are fighting for me, and when the fight is over, they will go. But Sanjaya is describing them very differently. He is describing them with reverence, shraddha, or piety. Now this is important because when we talk about justice, one thing we have to keep in mind is we cannot do justice if we don't have shraddha. If we don't have the shraddha, like to our guru, to our teacher, then we cannot possibly do justice. Why? Because if we don't have shraddha, then for someone like our guru, like our teacher or our elders, how can we have shraddha or piety for our relatives, our children, our spouses, boyfriends, girlfriends? How can we have shraddha for them? So it is important. The shraddha that Sanjaya displayed is legendary. It is simply legendary. Drishtadhyumno Viratascha Satyakischa Aparajita. There he mentions the word Aparajita. And it is wonderful. Like, whereas Duryodhana is describing them as like not with Shraddha, he is describing them as simple warriors. Or Sanjaya is describing them with great Shraddha. Drupado Draupadeyascha. This is shloka number 18, chapter 1. Sarvashah Prithivipati. Again another word, just wonderful words. Prithivipati, although they were not Prithivipati. Prithivipati means the ruler of the earth. So these people, the Drupad and Draupadi, they were not Prithivipati. Drupad was a king, he was a small king. Sarvashah Prithivipati. Now, but Sanjaya is describing them as if they were rulers of the whole earth. And this is wonderful, because he is showing something that Duryodhana never ever showed. Shraddha. Saubhadrascha Mahabahu Shankhan Dadhuhu Prithak Prithak. Shloka number 18, chapter 1. Saubhadrascha, that is the Abhimanyu. Abhimanyu and Mahabahu, he was a great fighter. Shankhan Dadhu, he also blew his conch shell, just like Drupad and Draupadi, the son, the children, the sons of Drupad. And then in shloka number 19, chapter 1, we see Saghosho, that sound, Dhartarashranam Hridayani Vyadarayat, that deep and reverberating sound, it as if it tore apart the hearts of the children of Dhritarashtra. And here Sanjaya directly mentions something that goes against his own master, Dhritarashtra. Sanjaya was employed by Dhritarashtra, right? So Sanjaya should never have mentioned something like this, but he does, which shows how far, the bitterness had progressed in the minds of all the subjects of Dhritarashtra. They simply hated the king and his rule. And it shows that, how Sanjaya perhaps was viewing justice. Saghosho dhartarashtranam hridayani vyadarayat. And when he says that, it's actually tempting to feel what Dhritarashtra was thinking. Because when we say Saghosho dhartarashranam hridayani vyadarayat, like on what power? Like that must have taken tremendous power for Sanjaya, someone who is an employee of Dhritarashtra, to say these things. But then we understand that things had come to a head. Things had come to such an impasse that Sanjaya had no other choice but to clearly point out to Dhritarashtra that, well, we are going to lose this war. And that's what he mentions again and again. Navascha prithivin tumulo bhyanunadayam. In the sky and on the earth, that sound created a tumult. Tumulo bhyanunadayam. Tumult. It was an uproar, tumultuous uproar. And that uproar, Hridayani Vyadarayat, as if tore apart the hearts of your children, O King Dhritarashtra. And this is wonderful, this shloka number 19, because it already sets the stage for what's going to happen next. So we see in shloka number 20, Atha vyavasthitan drishtva dhartarashtran kapithvajah pravritte shastra sampate dhanurudyamya pandava rishikesham tadavakyam idamaha mahipati. So what happens is, with this tumultuous uproar and all, in the Kapithvaja, that is the Hanuman, was sitting on top of the chariot, and ready, pravritte shastra sampati, that is, Arjuna was ready to throw his first arrow into the crowd. But then something occurred to him. So he actually talked to Lord Sri Krishna. Rishikesham tadavakyam. What did he say? He said, Arjuna Uvacha, Senayo rubhayor madhye ratham sthapaya nechyuta. That is, O Lord, O Achyuta. He did not say Lord, he says O Achyuta. Achyuta is just a name for Lord Sri Krishna. He says, Senayo rubhayor madhye ratham sthapaya. That is, please put my chariot between the two armies. So we don't know why suddenly he asked Lord Sri Krishna to do that. Maybe there was a change in mind or something, because he was ready to fight. Why did he ask Lord Sri Krishna to do that? It's actually a mystery. So maybe it was because Lord himself wanted him to do that, so that he could expound on the Bhagavad Gita. But we don't know. So the reason that Arjuna gives is in shloka number 22, chapter 1. Yavadetan niriksheham yodhu kaman avasthitan koirmaya saha yodhavyam asmin rana samudyame. That is, I want to see. What? I want to see the people. Which people? I want to see all these people, whoever has come here to fight. Yavadetan niriksheham. I will like to see. Yodhu kaman avasthitan. So I would like to see whoever wants to fight. Yodhu kama. Kaim maya sa yodhyabhyam asmin anasamudyam. That is, in this huge war, who shall I need to fight with? Right? And okay, so no problem. Yotsya manan aveksheham. This is shloka number 23. chapter 1, of course. Ya etetra samagata. So whoever is fighting right now, right here, samagata, and whoever is assembled, dharta rashtrasya. Now he mentions something important. Dharta rashtrasya durbuddher yuddhe priyachikirshavaha. Now this is very important. So he says dharta rashtrasya, that is the children of Dhritarashtra, durbuddher, that is he knows that they are durbuddhi, they are criminals, basically. Yuddhe priyachikirshavaha, that is whoever has come here to help out those criminals. And it's interesting to note that Arjuna is speaking such a language. This is not a language of Yudhishthira, for example. Yudhishthira would never speak like this. Arjuna is speaking like in terms of Durbuddhi and Subuddhi. So this is better than Duryodhana, of course, who was saying ours and yours. But this is still not as good. He is saying Durbuddhi and Subuddhi, good intellect and poor intellect, or ugly intellect. So he is still bound, as it were, in the bondage of intellect. And as we shall see, that is indeed true. So he is putting a lot of importance to his own memory of events, rather than the universal memory of God. So then, Sanjaya Uvacha, like what did God do? Evam ukto Rishikesho Gudakeshana Bharata Senayor Rubhayor Madhye Sthapayitva Rathottamam. That is, hearing thus the Lord Shri Krishna, he did not object. He says, okay, no problem. You want to see the warriors? So, okay, no problem. Senayor Bhayor Madhye Sthapayitva Rathottamam. That is, he put that nice looking, the chariot, a very nice looking chariot between the two armies. And then in shloka number 25, 26 and 27 is the crux of what happened then. Bhishma Drona Pramukhatah Sarvesham cha Mahikshitam Uvacha Partha Pashyaitan Samavetan Kuruniti. That is, Bhishma, Drona and everyone, right? Sarvesham, all of them. Cha Mahikshitam Uvacha Partha Pashyaitan Samavetan Kuruniti. That is the Arjuna. Arjuna saw all of them like assembled in the battlefield. And not just that, he saw Tatra Pashyat Sthitan Partha Pitrin Atha Pitamahan Acharyan Matulan Bhratrin Putran Potran Sakhins Tatha. That is, he saw all. He saw his fathers, forefathers, grandfathers, like teachers, uncles, brothers, like siblings, their own children of the children, and friends. So he saw all of that. Shvashuran, then there is more. Shvashuran, Suridashchaiva, Senayoru Bhayorapi. He saw his in-laws, the parents-in-law, fathers-in-law, and he saw his friends, philosophers and guides, basically. Senayoru Bhayorapi. So he, of course, also saw the two assembled great armies. The armies, huge armies. They used to have the hundreds of thousands of people phalanxed, all ready to fight. And then something very interesting happened. This is shloka number 27, chapter 1. And here starts actually the story of justice. Tan samikshya sakonteyah sarvan bandhun avasthitan kripaya paraya vishto vishidan idam abravit. Tan samikya, surveying all this, sakonteyah, that child of Kunti, that son of Kunti, sarvan bandhun, all the friends, avasthitan, seeing all of them like stationed, all the friends. Kripaya paraya vishto, he got into mercy. He felt a great surge of mercy. Paraya Vishtu Vishidan, he became depressed. He said this. So, and this is interesting. Suddenly, Arjuna felt a great surge of mercy, and that is going into justice. Why? Because suddenly, why did Arjuna, who was a great warrior, go into this mercy mode? Right? Like he was in the fighting mode, and now suddenly he is in the mercy mode. Why? Because he felt the pang of justice, something that Duryodhana never felt. Duryodhana's justice was limited, very limited. It was only me and mine, I, me and mine. Arjuna's justice is not that limited. It's beyond that. It can see the consequences of the war. So immediately he understands that what is going to happen in the war is not going to be good. And immediately he feels the surge of justice. Kripaya paraya vishtu. Wonderful language, Vyasa used to describe what was happening on that great field of Kurukshetra. Then Arjuna said, 28, shloka number 28. So far he was talking to Sri Krishna as simply his charioteer. He hadn't asked his counsel, he hadn't asked for his guidance, philosophy, anything. But now, seeing all these things, all these people, and seeing the prospect of killing them in the war, he was very, very frightened. So in shloka number 28 through 45 actually. Shloka number 28 through 45 in 18 shlokas, right? In 18 shlokas, Arjuna actually describes his predicament. Drishtveman svajanan Krishna yuyutsun samavasthitan sidanti mama gatrani mukhancha parishushyati. That is, oh my God, Drishtveman svajanan Krishna. Oh Krishna, I have seen all these people, they are relatives. Yuyutsun, they are ready to fight, and they have assembled here, samavasthitan. Sidanti mama gatrani. Sidanti. Sidanti is my whole physique, my whole body is actually faltering. Sidanti. Every limb is faltering. Gatrani. And then mukhancha parishushya. My mouth is being dry. My mouth is getting dry. Shloka number 28. Then he says, shloka number 29. Vepathuscha sharire me roma harshascha jayati. That is, I have no control over my body. Vepathuscha, my body is trembling. Vepathu. And roma harshascha, I am getting goosebumps. From what? From frightened, being frightened. I am extremely frightened. Gandivang srangsate hastat. I have a bow and arrow, right? The bow and quiver of arrows. The bow, the big bow, Gandiva, srangsate hastat. That is, it is falling off from my hands. Why? Because I cannot fight this battle. Okay? I mean, it's impossible. Like, how can I fight these people? They are my people. And this is important. Like, a few moments back, Duryodhana was mentioning our people and your people, or their people. Just like Trump, for example, ours and theirs. But now, Arjuna says something very, very interesting. He says, they are all mine. They are all relatives. I cannot kill them. Gandivam srangsate hastat. In my hands, the great bow, Gandiva, is falling off. Tvak jaiva paridajyate. My skin is burning. My skin as if is burning. Nacha shaknomi avasthatum Brahmativa chame manah. Shloka number 30. Nimittani cha pashyami viparitani keshava. So, I cannot stand still. Nacha shaknomi avasthatum. I cannot stand still. What is happening? Brahmativa chame manah. My mind is swirling. My mind is swirling. Nimittani cha pashyami viparitani keshava. I am seeing all bad signs, all bad omens, bad symptoms. I am seeing all bad things. Nacha shreyo nupashyami hatva svajanamahave. I don't see any good. I don't see any good in killing these people in the war. And this is the first sign of justice. The justice never actually, true justice, right? This is shloka number 31. True justice never claims another person's property as your own, right? True justice always says no. If it is your property, it's yours. If it is my property, it's mine. And true justice never wants to punish others without due process. There needs to be a due process. Nacha shreyon upashyami hatva svajanamahave. Nakankshi vijayam krishna. Nacha rajyam sukhani cha. I don't want anything. Nakankshi vijayam krishna. I don't want a victory in the war. Nacha rajyam sukhani cha. I don't want a kingdom. I don't want the happiness of kingdom. The glory of kingdom. I don't want any of that. Kingo rajyena govinda. That is shloka number 32. Kingo rajyena govinda. King bhogair jivitena va. Yeshavarthik angshitam no rajyam bhogaha sukhani cha. Like, what shall happen? What shall happen by getting a kingdom? And what shall happen by, living a comfortable life? King bhogair jivitena va. Right? Why? Like, what shall happen with that? Yesham arthik angshitam no rajyam bhogaha sukhani cha. Like, killing these people, who am I fighting this war for? Am I fighting this war for me or others? If I am fighting this war for others, then killing all of them, what use shall I have with the kingdom? I will have no happiness. How? Ta imeva sthita yuddhe pranams tyaktva dhanani cha. Acharyaha, pitaraha, putras, tathaiva cha pitamaha. All of them. Acharya, my teachers, pitara, my parents, putraha, like my kids, tathaiva cha pitamaha, my grandparents. They are all here. They are all here. They are all here. They will lose their lives. They will lose their property. They will lose everything. Matulaha, Shvasuraha, Pautraha, Shalaha, Sambandhina Sadha. All of them. My uncles, my in-laws, parents-in-law, my grandkids, all my relatives. Right? This is shloka number 33. What shall happen? Killing all these people, what shall I gain by that? Etanna antumichhami natopi madhusudan. Api trailokya rajyasya hetoho kingu mahi kriti. That is, I cannot kill these. I cannot kill them. Okay? I don't want to kill them. Etanna antumichhami. Natopi madhusudan. Even if they kill me, I don't want to kill them. Api trailokya rajyasya hetu. Even if I get the kingdom of heaven, even then, kingu mahi kriti. Like, what about a material kingdom? Like, even if I get the heaven, the whole, the kingdom of heaven, even then, I cannot kill these people. Why? Because in shloka number 35 he mentions, Nyatya dharta rashran na ka pritihi syad janardana. Like, if I kill them, what joy shall we have? Oh Janardana, oh Lord. Lord, it's like Janardana has a particular meaning. But so killing these people, na ka pritihi. Like, what joy shall we have? Shall we enjoy? Papam eva ashrayed asman hatvaitan atataina. So he recognizes that these people are actually atatai, that is, their attackers, assailants. So he recognizes that. But at the same time, they are perpetrators, or they are the combatants. He recognizes that. They are the first movers, atataina. But killing them might actually create more harm than good. Papam eva ashrayat tasmat. That is, more harm than good. Tasman narhaha vayang hantum dhartarashran sabandhavan swajanang hi kathang hatva sukhinah syama madhava. That is, it is better if they actually kill us with all our relatives and friends. Because how, like killing our own people, how can we be joyful? Like how can we be happy? Oh Madhava, oh Krishna. And then he, keeps on ranting actually, like he keeps on giving more and more explanations of his particular viewpoint, like starting shloka number 37. And like it goes on all the way up to shloka number 45. So he keeps on saying like what shall happen if he continues fighting this battle against his own people. And he says yadyapyetena pashyanti lobho pahata chetasa, etc., etc. So he talks about like what can happen from that point of view, right? Like if he fights the battle. And we see like a wonderful nature of justice. So we see that at the beginning Arjuna did not have any qualms. He was like, oh Sri Krishna, please place my chariot right in the middle of two combatant armies. So of course he did not have any feeling of justice at that point. But somehow when he was put in that situation, justice automatically arose in his mind. And that shows the Mahanubhavata, the greatness of Arjuna. Because Duryodhana in a similar situation would have never thought about justice. He would have thought about only one thing, victory. I want victory. Right? Whereas Arjuna is thinking more inclusively. He is thinking justice. He is thinking balance. But then, as we shall see, even Arjuna's conception of justice is limited. Why? Because Arjuna is depending on his general view of dharma, his general view of paropakar, being good to others as justice. But as we shall see, that is also limited. We need an universal view of justice, and that is what the God, Lord Sri Krishna, will actually provide the Arjuna with that particular advice. And that we shall discuss next time. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your presence. I know that I don't know. These are very little attempts on my part to purge myself of my own actions. So please bear with me. And if you want, you can like or you can dislike. It doesn't really. It doesn't matter much in terms of the overall import of the content, but if you find it okay, then you can like it, or you can also subscribe, you can dislike if you want, really, that's also fine. And thank you very much all for your kind presence, and I pray to God that you may realize God, you all may realize God in this very life. Thank you very much. Pranams. May God bless you. May God bless us all. May God bless you. Thank you.